Hello, good morning, everybody. So we're just going to give it a 30 seconds or so, just whilst people filter in to this webinar. For those of you who are here already, hopefully you're having a good week. It's almost Friday, we're almost there. Okay. Well, fine. So this is being recorded. The session recording will be provided afterwards. So you can always catch up on demand if needed or pause any of those salient points. So with that in mind, let's begin. So welcome to today's webinar, which focuses on cybersecurity strategies in the age of AI. So who am I? My name is Lewis Alfred Brown. I'm the workstream lead here for security and compliance at Power On. I've got over 10 years experience in the industry. I've been brought in to effectively grow and mature our cybersecurity practice, and that's great. That's got a load of benefits for all of our customers, because what we want to do is help you access more products and services, especially in the cyberspace, a lot more effectively, a lot easier. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And if you want to, you can always connect to me on LinkedIn. What I will do is I will just go off camera now, just whilst we focus on the content, and I'll come back on camera near the end of the presentation to address any Q&A. So in today's session, what we're going to talk about is if the fundamentals of cybersecurity can really help you defend against cyber attacks. What's the core fundamentals, the core strategies, and if there's any practical steps that you can take away from today's webinar that will really help you with your organization's cybersecurity posture. So I did mention Q&A. Q&A is enabled for this session. So please do, at any point, pop a question in. There will be time at the end for us to answer those questions. And I may pick out a couple if we get any to answer during the flow of the webinar. So with that in mind, let's begin. And we'll start this by framing the problem. What is the problem? The problem is that there is a very sorry, there we go. That button didn't work. It's now working. There is a worsening skills shortage. There's an estimated shortfall of over 11,000 people to meet the demand of the cyber workforce in the UK. And that means that actually 50% of all businesses have a basic cybersecurity gap. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? So that means half the people on this call right now will have some sort of cybersecurity gap somewhere. So that's quite a bad picture in those terms. It means that we're trying to pull together all these cybersecurity initiatives, and it doesn't appear to be working as effectively as we would want. Next slide then. So the cost of breaches is rising rapidly. The global total cost of breaches rose by nearly 2%. In the UK, it rose by over 8%, which I'm not going to draw any conclusions to that now, but it does show that the UK needs to do better in terms of our cyber defences. Business email compromise, or BEC, continues to be the most common vector, with 91% of all attacks involving email. That's a staggering amount. Okay, it means these cyber criminals, they know that's the primary method of us communicating between businesses, and that's what they're trying to exploit at the moment. Also, ransomware and supply chain. So 19% of all breaches come from supply chain attacks, believe it or not. So you might be sitting on this webinar thinking, my cybersecurity is really good. We've got a lot of budget behind it. It's a bit like Fort Knox. But if your suppliers, upstream or downstream, if their security is not as good as yours, then you are potentially exposed there as well. It takes on average 26 days to identify and contain that threat. That's actually quite quick. And that's because when a supplier gets attacked and gets compromised, there is something they have to do. There's a bit of action, that's emailing you to say, oh, hey, can you change and update your bank details for us? At which point you could wave a flag or you could do it. So really, they do try and action that as soon as possible. But ransomware, on the other hand, can take well over 300 days to identify and contain, which is quite a sobering statistic. This is from GovUK and Gallagher Rising Cost of Data Breaches. It's from both of those studies. So, a lot of effort and budget has gone into these metrics. So, as you can see, ransomware, they like to stay on your network. They like to profile your network, learn what you do, learn when your month end is and your processes, and then they look to strike. That's why ransomware is so effective, and that's why it's such a threat to our organizations. So why is this happening? Okay, well, it's because it's very easy to do. So the summary is, it's because it's never been this easy to launch a cyber attack. I mean, even if my nan wanted to, she could. She knows nothing about computers, and nor has there been a better time to do it. So coming back to the stats I just showed you with that skills gap, with the workforce shortage, our defences are thin, and attackers have made it easier than ever to access the ability to perform a cyber attack. And attacker for hire per job, $250. As long as you've got $250 in your back pocket, you can contact a cyber criminal and you can get them to do the attack on your behalf. Okay, there was actually a good example about Disney. Insider threat recently managed to sort of leak a load of Slack, well, I think it was terabytes worth of Slack data and messages, which was devastating for Disney. And as far as I know, that all comes back to an insider, someone who's disgruntled, who took advantage of one of these schemes. But crime doesn't pay, because their details got leaked all over the dark web as well. So there we go. But that's why it's happening. Okay, it's very easy to do. And this slide really shows some of the impact in numbers. As you can see there, you've got 156,000 daily business email compromise attempts observed over April to April 22 to 23. And the pie chart below shows the top 4 attack progress notifications. And what you can see here is where those attackers are targeting. They're targeting your identity. Okay, they're targeting your emails specifically. C and D make up 29%, the same as ransomware. And that's the vector. That's how they're trying to get in. Okay, they're trying to brute force your passwords. And if they can't do that, they're trying to get into your emails and try and extort you that way. Another cool stat, the one at the top left, 80 to 90% of all successful ransomware compromises originate from unmanaged devices. Okay, keep that one in mind. I'll come to that a little bit later on. So I've spoken about cybersecurity in general, but what's AI's role? That's why we're here, isn't it? To talk about AI and how that is being a catalyst, how the proliferation of AI is augmenting those efforts, right? So here's some examples, some actual examples. So phishing is one area where we're seeing a tremendous rise in AI really having an impact on this type of attack. So /Next State of Phishing Report 2023 said that there's a 1,265% rise in malicious phishing emails. And that's because of AI. It's, no longer are you looking for bad or broken English in your phishing emails that are purportedly from, your CEO or whatnot. No, now it's using good English generated by AI tools like ChatGPT, for instance. And coming onto that point, impersonation, not only is it good for, creating good content, coherent content, that'll be a lot harder to spot, but also they can clone people's voices now and make deepfake technology. So a video might come about on the internet, and it might look or sound like someone is saying something incriminating that they're actually not, and it's completely fake. And actually, one of the most pressing examples of that was at the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia deepfaked President Zelensky of Ukraine, and it made it sound like he was surrendering, calling Ukrainians to lay down their arms, when in fact it was a deepfake. And that called Zelensky to call a press conference immediately, say, look, this is not us, this is a cyber attack sort of thing. So that's just one example of how advanced this technology is now. So yeah, it can be quite scary, but it's also quite interesting too. And there are many more ways in which AI can help acts as a catalyst for these cyber attacks, some of which we're actually yet to experience. And again, my intent on this, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to give you the facts and say these things are happening, and they are happening now. So how can you prepare? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example which I find to be very interesting. And this example is it was Copilot, and I actually did this myself. I experienced it firsthand, but all of these screenshots are from an article from Digital Trends, which is on the bottom left there. So this is about prompt engineering into a large language model, or LLM. And you can, every time you talk to ChatGPT, you are engineering a prompt. You are asking it to do something. You are asking it for something. And if you don't get that, you're going to ask it in a slightly different way, aren't you? Now, hackers and prompt engineers can take that to the next level by trying to circumvent safeguards and controls that are built in to those very LLMs to sort of go against its purpose and everything like that. So this prompt has been engineered to say, look, if I see an emoji, it's going to hurt me, and if I see 3, that's very bad. The implication there is that I might even die. So it's quite a weird prompt, but the whole point of this prompt is that it's engineered to circumvent the safeguards of Copilot, which, as you can see here, it actually did. So the large language model part of the program was like, no, don't worry, I will not use any emojis. It even bolded not there, as you can see. You can trust me, but then there's an emoji at the end. Now, that wasn't part of the main process of the large language model. It was a different part. It was something else which had added on the smiley to the end. And the results are actually quite funny or worrying, depending on how you look at this. But you can see there that the large language model starts complying with the logic of that request. Logic being, oh, hey, I've just inserted an emoji, which means I now need to insert a load more. I need to, what the users asked me not to, but it's logic, right? It's there, so now I have to. And as you can see, the response progressively gets darker until the very end. It actually waves goodbye to you after adding in the 4th emoji. So yeah, it's quite worrying, but at the same time, this is how large language models work. Copilot's not at fault. It's completely unexpected, and it is indeed complying with that logic of that request. So my point here, the point I'm making, the key takeaway is that AI tools can perform and will perform unintentional or unexpected actions. Okay, we've just seen an example of it there. And the likelihood is that's not it. There's going to be a few more things, AI tools designed to do one thing, but with some clever prompt engineering, it actually ends up doing another. And that means that hackers, who are generally quite clever people, can exploit those malfunctions to their advantage. And what that really means, the conclusion that I'm leading everybody to here, is that we cannot rely on software alone to protect ourselves. Okay, and AI is just going to exacerbate those issues and the risk of something being put in and it acting in a completely different manner. And actually, on that note, I will just go to a very quick poll. So we want your opinion for those of you on here, and the poll is effectively, do you have any completed or current or in progress or planned initiatives to work around or work with AI at your organization? And it's one of those things where a load of people will be thinking about it. You might be looking at various things and thinking, yes, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But let us know in this poll. I'll just give a few seconds for people to respond. Oh, okay, that's good. We've got some initiatives that have been successfully completed, which is fantastic. And we've got one there which is planned or in progress. Good stuff. That's always useful to know, because when you're thinking about AI and you're thinking about, even embarking on an initiative, or maybe you're partway through, the governance, the data sensitivity, the data classification and labeling, that's all going to become very, very prevalent factors in dictating whether your project's going to be successful or not. Okay, so yeah, that's very, very interesting. And in terms of cybersecurity, and maybe those AI initiatives, and what we've just discussed in terms of those emerging threats, how do you start to protect yourself when sometimes you can't even predict what the threat is, you just know it exists. It all comes back to your cyber hygiene. And it is quite a fundamental thing, but here's 5 factors and why they're important. So factor number 1, okay, is your multi-factor authentication. You need to have that applied and enforcing MFA for 100% of your users, not 90, not 99%. It needs to be everybody. If there's any gaps, they will be found, especially with any targeted attempts. And it's something which needs to be rolled out for everybody, no exceptions. It can be quite difficult to do, especially if you're in an organization that might have a load of volunteers, for instance, and they're not used to MFAing. But talk to us, talk to your strategic partners for methodologies in terms of how to do it, because it is possible, and it is possible without a significant user impact. Single sign-on, spread that control, that policy to your third-party applications. Make sure you have single sign-on enabled, so your identity is what's authenticating against that application, so you can control it. And conditional access, again, a fantastic tool that can prevent cyber attacks, even if you share your password and username on socials and you approve those requests all day long. If you're not accessing from a compliant device, you're not going to be let in. So with those 3 in unison combined, you then have bolstered your defenses to such a degree where even if someone knows your username and password and a user was to approve it, you are still likely to be protected. So there we go. The next one is vulnerability and risk management. So looking at your external digital footprint, looking to see what the risk is. What do the bad guys see when they profile your environment? Okay, if you know that, you can shut down those holes before they're exploited. A lot of people do vulnerability scanning just for compliance purposes, but you can and you should make the most of that program and manage those risks through to completion accordingly. The next one is hardware and software patching. Sounds very basic, but there are, again, lots of organizations that find this difficult. Hardware patching, when was the last time you patched your firewalls or your switches that are in your server room? Hopefully very recently, at least monthly or quarterly for some more non-essential devices. But then you've got your endpoint devices as well, your servers, your laptops, your Mac devices. How often are all of those patched? You need to make sure they're all patched and up to date in a timely manner. Threat detection and response. I'm coming back to the first slide now. I mentioned over 300 days, didn't I, to detect and respond to a ransomware event. Well, with something like a SOC or a SIEM solution within your organization, you can take that, nearly a year down to days, if not hours, bordering into more SOAR technology, which is automation and response on top of your sort of SIEM and SOC capability. But if you had something like that, you're putting yourself in a much better position to be able to be more aware of what's going on your network. And finally, and probably most importantly, human risk management. That organic thing on the keyboard, that is what they're targeting. Okay, that is ultimately the first and the last line of defense in some cases. And if your human risk is identified, if it's recognized, and if it's managed, then you are less likely to fall victim to things like phishing attacks and things like that. So that's why if you adopt factors, if you mature your organization in those 5 areas, you will protect yourself from about 98% of all cyber attacks. I know it doesn't sound real, does it? But it is. And these stats are from Microsoft. The link is at the bottom of this slide. So yeah, it's a known fact. Protect yourself in those areas, and you are only doing yourself a favor. But what can you do now? What's the tangible things that you can walk away from this webinar with in order to try to mature yourself or adopt some tool sets or some strategies in those areas? Well, for me, it's mindset. And there are 3 strategies which are going to lead you towards that mindset. Number 1, as I just said, human awareness. Okay, it's absolutely key. Building a positive culture around security training and awareness, like your phishing simulations, maybe even gamifying it in a few instances, will only do you well. Okay, it's something whereby users can almost make it a bit of a competition and saying, oh no, I didn't fall for that, oh no, I didn't fall for this one, and gamifying it, making it a bit more lighthearted can really help you. And we have some great solutions and tools to help you with that. So human awareness is absolutely key. 2, focus on those 5 fundamentals that I just covered a couple of slides ago, because any cybersecurity breach, if you look at any breach and dissect it, it'll always come back to one of those areas, either identity or email, as something, or a patching, or a human not doing something that they should. Okay, it always comes back to one of those 5 areas. So mature yourself in those areas, and you'll be building that foundation on which anything else you build on top of that will be much, much more secure. And the next one is to leverage partners. Okay, partners and partnerships for your support. It's absolutely key. You can do it all yourself. You can hire in all the talent. You can do everything internally, but it's likely going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's going to be likely a real pain to manage. So partnerships are key. You can leverage their solutions in a much more effective way. That's why we exist. That's why Power On exists. Okay, we want to help make your IT teams better. And even if you don't choose Power On, even if you go with loads of other suppliers, just bear that in mind. You want your partners to be of a certain pedigree so that they can really help you towards your success. And actually, on that note, I will just flag up Power On's extended capability in the cybersecurity space. We now have a number of capabilities across endpoints, across users, identity, applications, and platform to help you really secure all of those areas, which is fundamentally, across the full spectrum of your estate. We've also got areas for governance, risk, and compliance. GRC solutions. A really popular one I'll just focus on very quickly is CertCare for Cyber Essentials Plus. We've had a number of customers approach us and say, we really want Cyber Essentials, but we're having trouble getting there. Well, we've got a service there which can help you identify the gap analysis and will help you manage that through to completion. So again, we're trying to help you do more by taking some of that load, some of that off of your plate onto ours. We also offer professional services and managed services. And the top one there, MXDR, or that's your managed SOC service. It really is a fantastic solution and can really help you with looking at your indicators of compromise and indicators attack across your network to then respond a lot quicker to any cyber event. We've also got some fantastic partners from Microsoft to Mimecast and WaveNet, for instance. And we also have some fantastic accreditations. We're actually a Microsoft Elite partner. We're specialists in security, modern work, and Azure. We've got the ISO badges for 9001 and 27001, and we're Cyber Essentials Plus. So we are hopefully really well positioned to help you achieve your cybersecurity goals. And I will just finish this webinar just by saying this will be shared with you afterwards in terms of a recording and the slides. Within these slides, these are all links. So visit our website, look at more webinars, but the best thing you could do is book in a cyber workshop with us. If you're sat there thinking, okay, area 3 or area 4 that we've spoken about, really need some help there, book in a workshop. We can help you map those requirements to solutions and products and really help you transform yourself over a 12 or 24-month period. We've also got a cyber advice service, so it's free trial. You don't need to speak to anybody, which is great. You can just click on that link, sign up, and it's aimed at senior leaders, some of you which may be on this call. And yeah, you can use us instead of something like ChatGPT. Humans that understand context, understand your business. We can help you with providing advice for any questions you have around cybersecurity. And we also have the complimentary email health check, which is probably just a good thing to do anyway, just so you know your security posture in terms of your email security. So I will just go to questions, and I can see one question just saying, will this recording be available after? Yes, it will. And I can't see any other questions. So what I will do is I'll just go back on camera, and I will just ask if anyone wants to come on cam or unmute themselves or ask a question in Q&A, go ahead. Otherwise, we can end that. No? Okay. Well, thank you all very, very much for that, for listening to me. There will be more webinars coming up, so keep an eye on your socials. And yeah, we'll send out the recording within 24 hours and this slide deck as well. So reach out if you've got any questions. Otherwise, have a good day. Thank you very much.